she is living in Europe?
Macron był gotowy wziąć udział w takiej debacie w
We have this pleasure.
Tak.
Mieliśmy w trójkę rozmawiać.
Aha.
Niemcy nie chcą się zgodzić.
Ciekawe. Good morning, everyone. I'm Matthew Kaminski. I'm the editor-in-chief of Politico. And good to have you this morning to discuss the defense of Europe. On a small personal note, I started off 30 years ago as a journalist in Vilnius, looking at the Baltics, spent the next 3 years in Ukraine, then went to the Balkans. At the time, it seemed like we were settling a lot. There were some certainties that were put in place, and much has changed. But there is so much uncertain right now. Europe is in the midst, it's entering its second year of the biggest ground war since World War II. The Balkans seem like everything is not right there. A lot of question marks over the future of the Western alliance. We have a terrific panel this morning to try and talk through these challenges with Poland, with the leaders of Poland and Lithuania, are two countries that have led the way in the West's response to Ukraine. We have the leader of the Belarusian opposition, and Belarus has played a very central role here and is a very central piece in sort of deciding what kind of Europe will we have on the eastern flank. Portugal is one of the founding members of the North Atlantic Alliance, and we have the leader of North Macedonia, which is in a region which had caused a lot of trouble in the 90s, and I guess is now part of the thinking about what kind of Europe we have going forward. Now, I want to start maybe, since it is morning, maybe with a couple quick round questions for this group to get us going. And in a sentence or two, I want to ask each of you, in these grim times, what is the one thing that makes you hopeful? Maybe I can start with President Duda.
What makes us hopeful?
Hopeful. The one thing that gives you hope this year when you think about the future of Europe, the defense of Europe.
Absurd will never exist for a long time, in my opinion. So this situation is absurd. Yes, that was hard to imagine that 70 years after the Second World War, yes, we will have war in Central Europe in full scale. This is something ridiculous, and that was very hard to believe when we received before the war, yes, all this secret information telling that we would expect full-scale Russian invasion against Ukraine, yes, and that Ukraine will probably survive no more than 72 hours, yes, and you know, that was something I remember I was counting those thousands of Russian military units, yes, and soldiers. Is it possible, yes, if you take into account the general number of Russian military forces, yes, and you have the information that Putin gathers some part of his military forces around Ukraine, yes, 160,000, 170,000, yes. Is it enough to invade whole Ukraine? Yes, if you take into account that this is a country 2 times bigger than Poland. Poland is 312,000 square kilometers. Yes, Ukraine is 2 times bigger. Yes, it's more than 600,000. Is it possible that they will occupy.
Andrzej, Kaminski said a sentence or two, please.
Yeah,
so early in the morning.
Okay, but what's
That's hopeful in a sense.
It's very.
Ukraine is still here.
I don't want to. I don't want to. I'm sorry. It's too early morning. I don't want to speak about hope. Yes, I'm very happy that Ukrainians are so brave, and a day before the invasion, few hours before the invasion, when we both visited Kiev with President Gitanas Nauseda. Yes, we talked with Volodymyr Zelensky. He said to me, Andrzej, we are really ready. He said to me, we are really ready, and we will never survive. We will never
surrender.
Yeah.
Perfect. President Nauseda, what?
I would like to stress a few moments. First of all,
Again, a couple of sentences.
okay, I try,
more than
I try,
two, but less
I
than
try
five,
my best.
I think.
I try my best. First of all, the success of Ukrainian military forces in the battlefields. I remember our first meeting after the war broke out on February 25th in European Council. And there was direct connection with Volodymyr Zelensky, and the mood was that maybe it will continue 1 or 2 weeks, but not longer. And now we already approach 1 year anniversary, terrible anniversary, but 1 year anniversary of this war. The second issue is, despite our some disagreements, we stay united. I am talking about European Union and also other like-minded countries. And you see, we passed already 9 packages of sanctions, sometimes with certain exemptions that trying to take into account the specificities of some countries. But even having quite difficult situation, we were able to stay united. And this unity is productive. There are 2 kinds of unity. Unity which is just cannot produce anything, and unity which is still productive. It leads us to the decisions. So those 2 moments, I think, they are very important, and if we will be able to increase the support to Ukraine, first of all in military sense of this word, I think the victory will be there, and this is not so long way to go.
Super. President Pendarovski.
2 sentences?
Yes.
The situation is completely desperate. Speaking about the European continent, we have multiplying crises simply reinforcing each other. There is no too much room for hope. But I will take the solidarity being shown on the unprecedented levels among the European partners and transatlantic bond, which has been never stronger in a decades. I will take the hope from last year as the point of departure for hope for this year.
Thank you.
Thank you. And as for me, I think that unity of democratic countries and decisiveness of countries gives me hope. And I know that, for example, Belarusians, they have already ripe for democratic changes in our country, and they will stand for these changes till the end. And I'm grateful that there are such leadership as Polish leadership and Lithuanian leadership that show example for other countries how to deal when enemy is knocking to your doors. So I'm really grateful for opportunity for Belarusians to participate in this new security architecture of our region. And I hope that not only politicians but ordinary people realize that a lot depends on them. And they open their doors and their hearts for all those who are looking for defense, who are looking for support.
Perfect. Mr. Bueno, you come from the other side of the continent, a little bit more peaceful side.
But I'm going to say more or less the same ideas that from the east. So coming from the south, the hope comes from this sense of unity, and it's unity of purpose, unity around our values, our European values that are pluralism, diversity, rule of law, reject of the war as a way of settling disputes. And we are all looking towards the future. Our future is European integration and these European values, and we are rejecting those that look toward the past, a very dark past in Europe, the spheres of influences, walls, fences. So this is the real hope.
You know, I was going to ask, as a follow-up, a quick round question, what worries you the most? But I think we got from all of you kind of a sort of hint of the worries. You did all speak about the unity of the alliance and the unified response. And not to put a too negative light on this, but I wonder, again, very quickly, where is the weak link? Where do you think that, how can this be undermined? What are you most worried about in terms of that unity staying in place?
Starting from
Yes,
this side, I'm not afraid that this unity will be broken. I think that both in the Ukrainian crisis and before in the COVID crisis, we have realized that the best method is doing things together. And if we compare this and how we tackled the crisis in 2008, the financial crisis, that took 10 years to get out, we have all realized that being united, being together, we get better through the crisis, we get out of the crisis faster and in better shape, leaving less people behind. So the only thing that worries me not within is that outside there is someone that thinks in an old fashion that war and violence is a way to impose your ideas and to settle political disputes.
Maybe another way to put it to you, like how would this, what is your worst case scenario for this year? Sviatlana, I sort of let me ask your sort of neighbor. To you. Tsikhanouskaya, yeah. What really? I mean, again, I think all of you give a sense of, you know, that there is resilience among the allies, but what worries you the most?
So, of course, I'm going to describe your ideal scenario. At the moment, I'm sure that Ukrainians, with the assistance and help of democratic countries, will win this war, and there will be changes, hopefully, in Russian administration. And so as we know that the fate of Ukraine and Belarus are intertwined, so I'm sure that the victory of Ukraine will be a new window of opportunities for Belarusian people to uprise again and to get rid of this dictatorship. So Belarus and Ukraine will be free, and we will become part of European family of countries, and in Belarus we will build democracy. In Ukraine they will restore their cities again with the help of the world, and everybody will be happy.
It's an unusually bright view from our part of the world.
But we live in reality, and I understand that there can be different scenarios, but we have to be prepared for everything.
No, I have no concerns that the newly found unity and solidarity, not only pan-European but transatlantic, will not hold this year. It will hold. But to be realistic and to be honest with everybody, with the public, with you, I'm a bit concerned whether that will hold when the war in Ukraine is over. Of course, everybody would like that war to stop today. But you know, the logic of the states, the logic of the national interests of the states has always been for centuries and centuries to take a look of your backyard. If we are going again towards giving priority to the national interests of the states, then this newly found unity and solidarity will be gone. Why it is necessary, after the war in Ukraine is over, why it is really necessary, critical even, to hold this unity and solidarity, transatlantic bond, because we are seeing throughout the world, in some of the biggest countries in the world, that the authoritarian tendencies are on the rise. If democracies are not getting together, sticking together, respecting the same values, and fighting for them, sometimes literally fighting for them, then the autocracy will prevail. We have said last year when this war in Ukraine started, well before that in Belarus, that this is, in essence, the dilemma and battle between democracies and autocracies and outright dictatorship on the part of the Russian Federation today. So we have to be in full unity and in full solidarity after the war in Ukraine is over. That is necessary for the better world.
President Nauseda, I mean, this book is very at a higher level. I wonder, when you're thinking about the things that sort of concern you, is there anything more immediate or sort of specific that maybe comes to your mind?
I will start first of all from saying that I am a strong believer that Ukraine will have this victory, and it will be a very important victory for Ukraine itself, but for all of us too. What worries me, you know, Putin realized that he was absolutely wrong by calculating some assumptions of this war, but he is desperate too. And it means that he is able to concentrate all the efforts and resources of big country, Russian Federation, ignoring economic and social needs of the society. This is the specific feature of the totalitarian regimes, that they can ignore the needs of the people and to bring anything on the altar of the war. And this is one issue. The second issue is that, yes, I have some concern that Western societies can be tired from this war, because we have already some features or some signs of tired Western societies. First of all, because of high inflation of energy resources. And we are not so used to the inflation rate like 10%, 15%, or in some countries 20%. And it means that having the democratic rules of game in our countries, politicians will spend more attention to these issues too. But I think there is one possible outcome from this puzzle, or solution of this puzzle. We have to stay united, and we have to take all the decisions which are oriented towards reduction of dependence on Russian energy resources. My country is a very good example. We started very early because we never had any illusions regarding Russian regime. So we started to prepare ourselves about 20, 25 years ago. And now we bear the fruits of these actions and these efforts. We were able to cut off all the ties with Russian energy resources 1 year ago. And I think this is very important to do at the European Union level. We started quite successfully, but we have to continue, because some countries are still dependent. They are exposed to the Russian blackmailing, especially energy blackmailing, and this is very important to break up this dependence.
A chance for one word answer even, and then I want to come back to you with a more specific question that will require more. What is the weak link in the West's response to Ukraine?
There has been one message from Ukraine since the beginning of the war. This is what Volodymyr Zelensky told us at the beginning on the phone. You know that at the beginning of the war, I talked with him practically every day, even a few times a day on the phone, and there has been one message: weapons, weapons, and once again weapons. We need weapons. We need military support, and this is the most important element of this game. Yes, if we still send a lot of military equipment for the defenders of Ukraine, cutting-edge military equipment, they still have this potential to stop Russians.
So I think you answered the question about the weak link, but indirectly, and let me maybe it's actually was leading to my follow-up, which is tomorrow Chancellor Scholz is speaking here. Germany, the UK has just been the first country to send tanks to Ukraine. The US is talking about sending the Abrams tanks. What do you expect or hope out of this week? Will Germany send the Leopard tanks? What might happen at this Ramstein meeting of defense ministers later this week in terms of arming? Have we turned the corner in terms of giving the Ukrainians more offensive weapons, or not?
5 days ago, I announced our decision about Leopard tanks. Yes, one company of Leopard tanks. It's about 14 tanks. We really decided to send it to Ukraine, but we hope and we are trying to organize a bigger support for Ukraine. So we hope that there is a few partners, a few allies who will give tanks to Ukraine, Leopard tanks, Challenger tanks from Great Britain. Yes, and so we hope that producer of the tanks, Germany, will also participate in this, in my opinion, very good idea. I was asked by Volodymyr Zelensky for that military support a few times. He said to me, Andrzej, we need modern tanks because it's the only way to stop the Russian invasion. Now, we sent to Ukraine our Krab howitzers, yes, very modern and very efficient. We sent to Ukraine more than 260 our tanks, but old ones, but old tanks. We had those tanks from USSR, yes, but that moment, it was half a year ago, yeah. It was in March, as I remember. They needed those tanks in that moment. That was immediate need, and so we decided to send this. You know, it was more than we afford. It was more than we afford. We hadn't those tanks in our reserves. That was those tanks were we took those tanks out of our military units, yes, regular military units, but we understood that this is you know issue of this. This decision that was the very difficult moment because Russian military forces, you remember, they were practically around Kiev, so that was very difficult time for defenders of Ukraine. We decided to send help, but that was. And practically, that was the beginning of the big military support for Ukraine, and so we hope that this time that this decision that we announced that we are sending our Leopards to Ukraine will start a new chapter in this military assist to
And
Ukraine.
are you talking to the U.S. about sending your MiGs to Ukraine and getting sort of I think it's F-18s or F-35s in return, or is that sort of a dead issue for now?
A very complicated story, so please.
Maybe we should switch off the cameras. Continue speaking on the topic.
Mr. Bueno, from a NATO perspective in a country further away, how much more do you think the alliance should be providing in terms of military hardware to Ukraine?
I think that the unity of all Europeans, with our natural transatlantic allies, especially the United States, is out of question. But it must be very clear, and this is also an important part of what is going to be at the stake this year, that this is Vladimir Putin's war. Neither NATO, no European Union, no any European country has won in this war or is at war against Russia. Because sometimes in Europe and in this panel, we all know what we are talking about. But last week, I traveled to Western Sub-Saharan Africa. The week before, I was in Latin America. Things don't seem that clear. Sometimes it seems like this is Russia against the Western world. We must keep remembering NATO is not a part of this war. President Zelensky and Ukraine didn't want this war and didn't do anything to deserve this war. This is Russia's war. So far, the political support comes from all allies, but the weapons comes from European Union and from European Union countries. And I think it is very important to make these things clear, because otherwise we can lose a lot of partners around the world.
That's a very good point. And President Nauseda, I'm curious to you, that sort of speaks to some divisions within the alliance about how far to go, obviously. I wonder how you've managed those divisions, since you're obviously in the more the avant-garde in terms of trying to push the alliance forward.
We are not a big country, of course, but we started to support Ukraine militarily, and we are the example how decisive we can be. And we started to deliver stingers to Ukraine even 2 weeks before the war started. And this was our strong commitment and absolute unity in our society. I have to stress this factor too, because in Lithuania, 99.9% of the population strongly support Ukraine, and this in such an environment it's very easy to take the decisions, tough decisions. But sometimes, yes, I have the impression that somebody has to take the first move, like in the story with the tanks. I like to play chess. So in chess, you have to take the move, and then others will follow. So, somebody has to take this leadership, to take the decision in order to support Ukraine, because the tanks become very strategic factor of this war, especially now, having in mind this positional war in the eastern part of the country.
So one word answer, do you think Chancellor Scholz will greenlight the Leopard?
I strongly believe that Chancellor Scholz will decide on this. And I was a witness of a very important break point or turning point in the thinking or mentality of Germany. By the way, one more witness was Prime Minister of Poland, Mr. Morawiecki, and we visited Berlin. And at that time, Germans decided that instead of providing humanitarian aid, they decided to deliver weapons. It was first very important qualitative moment in the decision-making of Germany. And now we are in the situation where there is more commitment needed, stronger commitment needed to deliver armored vehicles, tanks to Ukraine, and hope very much that our strong ally will do this.
Right. Let me just change tack, if you don't mind. I want to ask President Tsikhanouskaya if the elections were confirmed, as I guess a lot of people in the West hoped. What is your reading of where Lukashenko is right now? And do you expect that he would, or Putin would, open that northern front from Belarus?
So first of all, when you are asking our panelists about weapon, I feel a little bit as alien here, because we are, as Belarusian people who are under repressions for 2.5 years already, we can't give HIMARS or crabs to Ukrainian people. But the most of the population of Belarus are for Ukraine. We don't want to become enemies because of awful decisions of illegitimate Lukashenko. We are supporting Ukrainians as we can with information. When the war has started, our railway partisans disrupted railways to slow down equipment, Russian equipment going to Ukraine. Our volunteers spread information inside Belarus what's going on in reality. But now we are in such a position when Belarus unexpectedly people became co-aggressor in this war, because Lukashenko is maybe the only ally to Putin. He has to be loyal. He provided our country as launch pad for missiles, for training of Russian soldiers. And I have to say that the Belarusian army is not loyal to Lukashenko. They don't want to die or to be killed on the Ukrainian battlefields for the ambitions of two usurpers. They don't want our nations, Ukrainian and Belarusians, to become enemies. And Lukashenko knows this, and that's why he's so insecure about sending Belarusian troops to Ukraine. Because our soldiers, even if they are sent, they could change the sides, they could defect, they could hide or whatever. But Lukashenko is welcoming all the Russian troops, all the Russian equipment, and for sure Belarus can be again and again used as aircraft carrier for Russians. The presence of Russian troops, the number is about 12,000 people at the moment, is for threatening Belarusian people, to control Belarusian people, and to distract attention of Ukrainian troops from hotspots on the east to northern side. I know that Ukrainians are prepared for possible land attacks from the side of Belarus, but our task is to prevent such invasion. We are working very thoroughly with our Belarusian army, explaining what's going on, because they might be misinformed about this. So this internal explanation is very important in this issue. So we want the world to divide Lukashenko's regime and Belarusian people, and to perceive us differently.
Super. So one last question I want to pose, and then I'm going to open up to the floor. So please think about maybe things you would want to ask. President Pendarovski, we haven't talked about the Balkans that much, but there is some you notice on this, lower down on
we
in the front page.
We have a separate roundtable on 2 days from now about the Western Balkan.
But tell me quickly, how worried should we be about what is going on in Mitrovica, what's coming out of Banja Luka? I mean, you're one of the newest members of NATO, and this obviously was a major preoccupation for the alliance in the 90s, early 2000s.
Short overview. We have two fragile points, or hotspots, if you like, from time to time. In the Western Balkan region, this is Republika Srpska within Bosnia and Herzegovina, and north of the Republic of Kosovo. What Putin's regime is doing is, for years back, not only since the war in Ukraine started, but for years back, he is trying to provoke the people there in order to disrupt the integrity of these two countries. But realistically speaking, in the past year or so, Russian propaganda, fake news, political propaganda, hybrid threats, that kind of attacks has not intensified, because Putin's regime is fully preoccupied to counter the Western alliance because of the war in Ukraine. But local actors, some of them who are not quite happy with the so-called peace agreements being reached in the 90s, are doing their part of the job. And they are from time to time provoking with the inflammatory rhetoric, then some disturbances in these two countries. My guessing is, and my judgment is, that if Russia will try to deflect somehow the attention of the West, again from Ukraine, which is the main theater of war and propaganda, of course, that the Balkan or the Western Balkan region is more prone to that than Baltics. So we should take care about that as an alliance, as a NATO alliance, and as a member states of the European Union or candidates for membership in the European Union, because it seems to me that the so-called soft spots in the whole pan-European security architecture right now, apart from Ukraine, of course, and that danger coming from Kremlin in this direction is Western Balkan.
Who's the key player here, EU, NATO, or the US?
United States.
Interesting.
With due respect to everybody else, and I've heard the Minister of Spain speaking about the European...
Portugal.
Sorry,
Spain.
Spain.
Sorry, it's Portugal on the
We share the Iberian Peninsula, and I love my Portuguese colleague, but I'm still the Minister of Foreign Affairs today.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, speaking about Europe, only the European countries, or the European, very shortly, just to explain a bit more, said that only European countries are giving weapons to Ukraine. The most of the weapons, with due respect to everybody of us, my country, North Macedonia, is among the top 5 contributors in the military hardware to Ukraine, but the United States of America is leading the field.
Perfect. Are there any questions from the audience? And please pose it as a question and do introduce yourself.
I am part of the Global Shapers community, the WEF's youth delegation. You've all expressed your confidence in Ukraine winning the war, but my question to you is what needs to happen for Ukraine to win? Can Ukraine win with Putin in office, or does there need to be a change in the Russian leadership, and how ready you are? Sorry?
No. We don't mention that Ukraine will win this war. We mentioned that Ukraine will not lose this war.
So
I mentioned Ukraine will win this war.
Okay, second question.
No, continue, please.
Then the question is, for peace to come back to Europe, then does there need to be a leadership change in Russia, and how far are you ready to go to push for that? Thank you.
That's a really good question. I wonder who wants to address regime change in Moscow to make Europe a safe place.
Processes will go in parallel. The more successful Ukraine is in the battlefields, the higher the probability that something will happen in Kremlin. Because sooner or later, it will lead to the mistrust in among the closest allies of Vladimir Putin. And yes, I cannot ignore or I cannot neglect this possibility that something might happen in Kremlin, and it would mean the end of the war too. I have no illusions that it will be a democratic government replacing Vladimir Putin. Probably there will be a long transitional period ahead, and nobody knows what will be the outcome. But probably it would lead to the resolution of this crisis in Ukraine. But the second scenario of very important and evident victories in the battlefields is possible too. So both scenarios, I think, are likely, and probably now it would be not serious to try to forecast, because those forecasts would be not very credible, to try to forecast which scenario we will go.
There's a question back there, and then we'll go over here. Yeah.
My name is Wolfgang Krach. I'm the editor-in-chief of Süddeutsche Zeitung in Germany. President Duda, you mentioned you were talking about the delivery of tanks, Leopard 2, to Ukraine. As we follow in Germany the very skeptical, rejective attitude of Chancellor Olaf Scholz up to now, and his hesitating. Why do you think that he will change his attitude and allow or endorse the delivery of Leopard 2 tanks now?
Two reasons, sir. One reason, Germany is part of the NATO alliance, and if there is a situation that few allies are ready to give their tanks to Ukraine, it's important moment. And the second is that, as I see, the pressure of political and German political stage and German public opinion is becoming stronger and stronger and stronger. So I hope that the result of all that and elements all that elements will result in this very, 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 very needed decision.
Right here.
My name is Markus Preiss. I'm the bureau chief of AID German TV in Brussels. Since you already answered, my question goes to President Nauseda. Just the other way around, do you have any understanding why Germany, why Chancellor Scholz is so reluctant to be more decisive? You made such a strong case why tanks should be delivered. Do you understand why Germany is hesitant? And the other question goes to the Spanish foreign minister. Spain was among the first countries to propose to send Leopard tanks to Ukraine back in summer. If there were a decision right now to send them, were Spain also sending tanks? Thank you.
I will try to answer very shortly. Yes, we have 27 members of European Union, but the attitude of the society to what is happening in Ukraine is quite different. I could name again the example of my country. I cannot even imagine that, for example, some demonstrations against the support to Ukraine could take place in my country. Probably they will not collect 200 people in my country. But I understand also that situation in some other countries is different. And President Duda mentioned that the attitude of German society is changing. But still we cannot ignore the reality that still the attitude or the mood of German society is absolutely different comparing with Lithuania. So this is the reason why politicians have to take into account this situation, and sometimes it explains that some decisions in some very important countries of European Union and NATO come later than we all expect and we would wish. So this is the reason why we see some delay in the decision making. And I have to tell you honestly, it's a pity, because every day of this war costs a lot. Not to us, not so much to us. For us, it's just means that probably energy resources are more expensive, but it's peanuts comparing with the suffering of Ukrainian nation. So every day brings more casualties, more destroyed houses, infrastructure, and so on. So we don't have the luxury for such delays. And decision making must be decisive, fast, and it would lead to the faster victory in this war.
There is a very important meeting of ministers of defense in a few days where important decisions will be made, and we like to do things together and united because we think that that's the best tool to bring peace to Ukraine. That possibility is not on the table as we are speaking today, but the way Spain is behaving in this Ukrainian war is at each state we do what we think is the best to help Ukrainians to defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity and to bring peace the fastest as possible to the country.
Super.
You know, sir, our countries spent almost 45 years behind the Iron Curtain. So we know Russians very well, and there is one answer in Poland, in Lithuania, in Ukraine. Ruski mir, no, thank you.
Since I'm coming from Washington, let me ask a very parochial Washington kind of question to this group of European leaders. How concerned are you about some of the noises coming out of surprisingly, I guess, if you look at the history of American foreign policy, of the Republican Party, which is calling into doubt support for Ukraine, kind of curious, how closely are you even following that? And even support for Ukraine, but it's actually support for the
Of
alliance,
course,
since the previous president said NATO.
You know, we are really far away from Washington, D.C., but geographically speaking, but politically we are following that closely. I am not seeing very strong signals that within the Republican Party, these voices are so prevalent, so to say. And it seems to me that the bipartisan support within the Washington, D.C., towards the war in Ukraine is unprecedented. You're living there, you're coming from the United States, then tell me any other issue on which the Americans or political parties, two main of them, are so unified around. There's no any other single issue. So on the issue of Ukraine, war in Ukraine or Russian invasion in Ukraine, they are, I think, 90% unified. And it's going to hold.
Yes, we have. This is a matter of concern, of course. We are also closely watching what is happening there, but I think we have to decide just by looking what the United States government is doing. And the United States government is doing a lot. And I expect that there will be bold decisions taken in the NATO summit, which will take place in Vilnius this time in July. And we have very high expectations that it will be not only the summit dedicated to our own security, but also the summit dedicated to the security of Ukraine, meaning that we will find some formulas or algorithms regarding the expectations of Ukraine to integrate closer to the NATO too. So far, of course, I cannot say that we will discuss the full-fledged membership of Ukraine in NATO. But we have to find some new expressions or sentences just giving the hope to our friends in Ukraine. Because every time, to repeat what we already said in Bucharest summit in 2008, we keep the doors open. It's not enough anymore. And we got this message very clearly with President Duda when we gathered in Lviv.
Okay.
Please don't tell us that the door is open, because we cannot find this door, raise this door.
When will Ukraine join NATO, do you think?
When?
Yeah, give me a date.
Oh, please give me raise more simple questions, but I believe that it's possible in few years' time. But having in mind that we will be very committed to grant this status to Ukraine, like we did in European Union. I have in mind candidate status to Ukraine. But it will depend very much on the success of Ukraine in this war.
One word question to you. When will the regime of Lukashenko fall?
I can't say such.
One word answer.
I don't know such prognosis, but I think that we all have to do everything possible for this happen as soon as possible. And on behalf of all Belarusian people, and I will dare to say on behalf of Ukrainians, that we are grateful to all the countries that are supporting us in our difficult paths to democratic changes, to our serenity and independence. And long live Belarus and glory to Ukraine.
Super. Last word to you, and we're over time. So
I always say we have to support Ukraine. This is the most important element. And of course, and the United States, they have the key, the crucial role in that process. Yes, but you shouldn't underestimate the role of the rest of the NATO alliance, because it's much easier for American authorities, for the President Biden and the members of American administration to send next supplies, military supplies for Ukraine, if they can say, okay, but we help with the rest of the NATO, yes, because Poland sent military support to Ukraine, and this is more than $2 billion. Yes, it's a huge money for the country like Poland. I don't know, Great Britain sent a tremendous military support to Ukraine, yes, and even Lithuania. Lithuania is a small country, but they sent practically all their what's the
Not all weapons.
not all weapons, but stingers, all your stingers,
Stingers, yes,
all your
yes.
stingers.
Out
You
of
sent
stock.
all your stingers. Yes, there was a moment we sent practically all our Thunderbolt, you know, this kind of weapon, yes, against the aircraft. And so it's really a difficult situation, and we understand that. But this military support for Ukraine is a crucial element of how to solve this difficult situation.
Super, thank you. On that note, thanks to all the leaders for coming this morning. Thank you so much.